Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio, hosted once again by yours truly, the wise but weary, young but yielding, and lovely but low-key, Evelynn L. Blackwell. Thank you all for having me. Perhaps you know of us Blackwells? We ran Sturgeon's first true penny dreadful stand back in the day, and oh, were they ever a sight to behold! Showcasing all sorts of horrors, criminals, and supernatural wonders of all kinds. These first-rate first editions were sent out all over Sturgeon and beyond. I vividly remember seeing many of our own Blackwell family members featured as cover art a time or two. Jackal certainly had a few features, before he made us sign an NDA about his criminal undertakings, citing that it was much harder to commit a murder when everyone knew exactly how he did it. One thing that made our editions truly special was that they were purely non-fiction. Sure, it's one thing to detail a gruesome thriller that didn't even happen, but that's not where the true heart of entertainment lies. Our only regret was not including a "do not try this at home" label on any of the more grisly special features. I do believe the crime rate saw a considerable uptick in those last few years. It's a good thing Papa Kaio's illustrations were blood-soaked to the point of obscurity, or none of us would be sitting here right now. Oh, but other than that, it was some good reading. Anyway, I am not Dusklight's main host, but today I am its mostly dead counterpart. My job here at this fine radio station, just like my twin brother Everett, is to bring you some of the most twisted, interesting, and downright bizarre tales that Everett's wonderful many-legged runners collect from the far corners of Sturgeon and beyond. Some will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some will call you up, ask you how your day was, listen to your recounting of every mundane event and idle gossip in your life without batting an eye. They will do this for years, lure you into a false sense of security, making you believe that they care, that you can trust them. And then, one day, a day in which you least expect it, they will rise from the ashes, block out the sun, infiltrate every shadow in all the corners of the world, and before they swallow you up in their pits and pits of never-ending darkness, you will hear a whisper on the wind calling, "Plot twist." Because they're only stories after all, and we take stories very seriously. I do hope, by the way, that you enjoy our new trimmings. We got a new coat of paint, and somehow I think that next time Everett will look a bit more animated. I mean, he is a ghoul, so animated is sort of his thing, but it is hard to maintain beauty standards when you're already 1 foot in the grave. Please show your love for Sir Gorky in the comments and check out his DeviantArt. The man truly is something special. Without further ado, it is time for our story this evening. This is the third part of our adaptation of the Bar series, aka The Spaces in Between, by our resident janitor TJ Lee, who is also playing the part of Sully and Venerator. Joining him is an amalgamation of spirits collectively called Lucy K, the inhabitants of which don't so much have unfinished business as much as they have business that they'll get to in about a week or so. Maybe next month, I don't know. They've got a lot going on, so it's kind of whenever they feel like it. Get off their backs, will ya? Anyway, they are playing the hedonistic Krauss, while dear friend of the channel, Rhonda Pauno, is playing Temperance. Rhonda is a seasoned actor who you may have seen in the worldwide phenomena that is Mythos. If you've somehow not heard of it yet, Mythos is a blend of the fantastical and action-packed. You get to see a legendary tale of Odin right in front of you. They'll be going back on tour shortly, but in the meantime you can check out Rhonda and the rest of the cast at Mythos Ragnarok in the description below, as well as Rhonda's other projects. Special thanks must be given to Mandy Moe for the original beauteous image of Everett you see when you look at our page. Really, Everett? Beauteous? To Sir Gorky for the truly, accurately horrifying rendition of our humble studio. And to Neshian on Twitter for gracing you all with my spiritual beauty. Thanks, as always, must also be extended to the Dark Somnium for being such a gracious yet terrifying sponsor of the channel, and lastly, our music is sourced and provided by Cryo Chamber, Invado Elements, the Nobody Channel, and the Dark Somnium again, with gracious thanks. If you enjoy these intros and want to see more, please ensure you've got notifications on and leave a comment for every video you encounter. With that, the sun has set and dusk has crawled into the studio once more. Whether you're working, prepping to sleep, or evading the formless void that will one day consume us all, Blackwell is here to soothe your ears and captivate your soul. Now, close your eyes and take a deep breath. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it.
You ever meet those kinds of people that, from the outset, you just know are unhinged? Maybe you take 2 minutes into the conversation before they suddenly mention they regularly infuse their boogers, nail clippings, and whatever other bodily shavings into a broth that they think gives them the ability to see into the future, or some shit. Well, a couple days after the incident with Gomez, while I was still trying to figure out where to go from there, a patron I didn't recognize walked in. Maybe that's just because word was getting around about the kind of place this was, or they just stumbled in here by accident. Either way, it was a tad strange, as were the moments leading up to it. Cheddar was restless, pacing around the bar constantly. He was never a big fan of thunderstorms or heavy rain, preferring the comfort of his blanket or his best friend's lap. Unfortunately for him, I was expecting a delivery, and our regulars would need a top-up soon. I should clarify. While our top-shelf merch is our main attractor and isn't paid for with money, we do of course have lower-shelf brews that are chargeable. How else do you think we stay afloat? The delivery came and I thanked the courier, a stack of various concoctions now waiting to be placed into their new homes. Krauss had come in on his day off as the delivery was finishing and sat petting Cheddar, taking grateful sips of Pulse Thumper as they saw the courier out. Krauss had worked with us for about 3 years. He was the living embodiment of hedonism. Claimed to have once been an insurance fraud investigator that occasionally bent the rules to get bigger payouts. By bending the rules, I of course mean he started fires that couldn't be put out, including one literal fire if you believe the stories. Though he was always careful to ensure that nobody was ever present. Typical story of someone who's inherently loyal to you. He turned up one day and simply never left. How can you say no to a guy like that?
So you just straight up torched this motherfucker where I'm sitting?
He asked, eyes awash with admiration of my feet as Cheddar lapped up the attention. Yep, melted him into the floor before my partner did his thing. He deserved it, I replied, cleaning away the 4 empty bottles Krauss had already had.
Whoa, you are a beast, Sully. But why would you want to get involved in this? Ain't like you to meddle. This place is meant to be free of judgment, right? What if someone comes asking?
I paused. He was right, and I was definitely not going to make any friends by doing this, but I looked at the ultrasound photo in the code rack area before replying. We have a section of lost and found, as any bar does, but ours has been steadily accumulating more of the lost, and it's becoming a concern. These people are going fucking missing, Krauss. Besides, the police have better things to do. This place ain't exactly in their jurisdiction. I sighed. My shoulders felt heavy just thinking about all the people I'd gotten to know that were lost in the ether. For every thank you message we receive, a missing poster follows. I saw Letty the way she was, and, well, I guess fate intervened when the photo fell out and Gomez walked in. Krauss chuckled, finishing his bottle, putting his face mask back on, and grabbing his hoodie.
Well, you're a stubborn bastard, so you're in it for the long haul either way, but I'll be right there with ya. Look, I gotta shoot. Gotta drop off that needs doing. But I want some of that Emporium whiskey next time I'm in, okay? Maybe then I'll tell you the rest of my story.
He looked over at the grand bronze flask sticking out of the crate, a royal seal adorning it, and the label beneath reading, McGill's Distilled Black Sea Extract, a way to float or to sink. Your choice and your volition. See your memories become clear. That's the McGill way. I smiled and nodded, waving him out as I put the bottles away and staving off the exhaustion I felt. The day wasn't done just yet. I put up our new sign, Mahogany and Cheddar Make Everything Better, above the wall behind me, pouring myself a glass of Emperor's Refuge, a thankfully optional alcoholic drink. It sat in a large oval container, a beautiful fluid preserved in amber with a small crown atop it that acts as a mixer. When the crown is rotated and the diamonds are fixed correctly, it releases the extra ingredients into the container, allowing it to glow brilliantly with the shimmer of a diamond in the light. I stared at the bottle as I swirled the mixture in my other hand, the label in a garish font befitting that of royalty beaming back at me. Noble blood proudly present the Emperor's Refuge, for when even the most diligent man must rest and clear his mind. I don't know about that one, buddy, but I'll take a rest all the same. I smile. Cheddar walks up expectantly, his tongue hanging out as I down the drink with a hearty gulp. Yeah, you're royalty too, buddy. You're the Duke of Scraps and Barks. I pat him as he licks my hand. A brief moment of reprieve before the sound of thunder and the door being kicked open causes him to sit upright and bark, shattering the tranquility. Standing in the doorway and shrouded by a thick blue robe was a tall, thin individual I'd never seen before. He didn't so much move as he glided towards the bar, not a drop of water leaving his person and staining the wooden floors. Cheddar moved behind me and whined. Something about this guy wasn't right.
This is the place. Yes.
A raspy, well-spoken voice called from beneath the hood. It sounded as if the vocal cords had been shredded to bits and nothing but ribbons held on, threatening to tear at any syllable too elongated. It made my fucking skin crawl. But I'm a professional, and I held my nerve. You got it. Welcome to the spaces in between. I'm Sully, and this big lug behind me is Cheddar. What can I get you? I open my arms and gesture to look at our stock. The eyes do not move, but the face gets closer. As they do so, I can see that the eyes are manic and wide, unblinking in their stare. If I looked close enough, I dare say they were even shaking.
I wish to be closer to my lord. How does one do this?
It asked, the stench of its breath now close enough to singe my nose hairs and set fire to my mustache by proxy. I leaned back slowly and took in his question. Doesn't quite work like that here, fella. You want top-shelf stuff? You need to bring me a story. I'll hear it out and help pick the right drink for you on your first time. I sat back against the counter, determined not to go blind from the smell when they began speaking again. So, what have you got for me? The figure wordlessly sat down on the adjacent stool, their form hunching over like a coiled snake, and their eyes fixated on me even as the head beneath the hood dipped down. It was unnerving.
I was a lost soul before I found godliness. I used to do as my body commanded without thinking of the consequences. If it urged me to burn something, I burnt it. If it willed me to hit someone, I hit them. If it compelled me to, well...
I may not have seen the smile beneath the hood, but I could fucking hear it in the voice. I didn't like where this was going, but hearing him out was part of the job, so I held my tongue.
For the longest time, I did as I wished. But one day I grew too bold, and my wings were clipped. I gazed upon the sun and saw the true face of salvation. The light shining through him and forcing the light within me up and out through my chest. The light inside is the path I needed to give myself purpose. But...
He paused, the arms under his robes trembling as I sensed frustration building in him, the smell of stale water running through the whole bar and making me gag.
But I have reached my limit, and the light in me is growing dim. I heard about your establishment and the unique properties it possesses. So, if I must divulge something to you, I will. But your concoction must do the job, my friend.
I give him the once-over, and beyond the obvious fact he was cloaked and smelled worse than a corpse in the midday sun, there was something off about him. Maybe he knew something. I glanced at my top shelf and saw a bottle roughly the size of a skull sitting dutifully on the far end, awaiting to be grabbed. It had a good weight to it. Various tendrils forming hooks to hold on to, and the base of the tendrils wrapping around a face with a look of abject terror permanently across the only visible eye, the other having the socket bored into by a thick, black tentacle and exiting out the mouth as a spout. A murky, red liquid sloshes about as I set it down, the label reading, "The Elixir of Norsha, the river of fate washing down your throat, never ceasing and singular in its direction. You take this, there's no going back. I'm not even sure what will happen to you. So your story better be going somewhere. I'm not the religious type." I frowned, pulling a chalice off the shelf behind me and filling it to the brim, the liquid congealing and laying perfectly still once poured as if frozen over. I kept it in front of me as I felt the unceasing stare bearing down on me, but I was undeterred in my decision. "Whenever you're ready. I've got all the time in the world, Mr. I paused and waited for a reply, but instead I was greeted by that sensation of a smile, like I was being sized up.
"Venerator will do just fine,"
he replied eventually, his arms still in his lap and his posture unchanged.
"I must confess, your hound makes me uneasy. Perchance you could remove him until I am finished partaking in this drink."
Offense washed over me, but I held it in for the sake of the patron and the desire to see where this was going. I obliged and sent Cheddar to the back, knowing this was not my smartest moment. As I shut the door on him, a smash echoed from the bar. Upon rushing around, I saw the bottle was in 1,000 pieces, and the rest of the red liquid was fastening itself to the floor, soon to be a permanent stain.
"My apologies. I was reaching for the chalice and I forgot how close it was. I would be happy to reimburse you."
The eyes didn't leave my direction once. Did he stare at me the entire time I was putting Cheddar away? No matter. Your story will be payment enough, especially while I pick up these pieces. Go ahead, Mr. Venerator. I sighed, leaning down to begin the arduous, mundane task of cleanup. 99% of a bartender's job. The other 1% split evenly between interesting stories and freaks like this guy. Remind me why I do this again?
"I really liked my first test. She was a delicate little thing whose mother had abandoned her at birth. The rest of the litter had cut her out and she would never survive. Master told me the light in her would be best suited added to my own, but it had to be cleansed from her. So, like any dutiful pilgrim, I took the flames of purity to her and stripped the light from her flesh once the fur had melted away."
He paused. I could hear the shiver from under the bar as he gasped.
"Screams were like a private performance for me. I still get tingles now."
I started picking up the bigger pieces and, in the reflection, saw that Venerator had set back down the chalice and that his eyes were no longer set on me. Unease washed over me, but I continued to clean. "What happened after that? Surely your master didn't just grant you a seat on the council?" I quipped, hoping my humor would ease the tension, but it didn't.
He told me I couldn't be present for the graduation ceremony, that I had a more important job to undertake. My second assignment was dull compared to the final one. I was to gain his favor by ensuring his actions were seen to the end, no matter what it...
He began coughing and hacking, pushing himself away from the table as the drink began to take effect. The elixir of Norsha wasn't just a way to get you closer to your chosen idol metaphorically, it shifted you to be what they wanted, regardless of the circumstances. I had no idea what it was going to do to him once it took hold, but it was my chance to learn more, and I wasn't willing to let go. As he curled over on the floor, I got to my feet and leaned over the counter to talk to him. I could see the exposed skin on his arms beginning to grow gray and the nails lengthening to form sharper claws. Your master. He did something, didn't he? Something you wanted to be a part of. The Venerator didn't reply. He didn't even move, save for some light breathing. I'm still figuring out what he did and how the hell someone like you found this place. You don't think I realize what you are? You're playing a dangerous game coming here in your condition, you know that? This isn't the first out-of-the-way bar you've been to, is it? While I didn't go out much, I wasn't the only unusual bar around, and my colleagues had been murmuring about weird visits, strange hooded people asking for very specific top-shelf concoctions that they should have no idea about, with stories that seemed far too strange to be real. I'd even known a few places to go dark not long after mentioning this, so I'd be mindful of newcomers since then. Especially with the comments the anglerfish artist made. What did your master want with Letty? She's just an ordinary woman. She led a good life. Help me understand. I leaned down to pick him up and I could see his body shaking, a weak laughter emanating from beneath the cloak. A hand appeared before I could react and lifted me up off my feet with ungodly force, the frame now standing up and becoming taller as it did so, far taller than before. I kicked my legs, but I couldn't find any footing or area to reach. I was completely at his mercy, the voice no longer raspy as it spoke, but booming and guttural.
She was a crucial part of the Ascendancy. Born of special blood, tied to the cycle. Take her out, break the cycle, and free shackles from my master's chains. My fellow disciples, Reverence and Disquiet, saw the potential in her, and told our master she was the one they'd been searching for. The one hiding from us for so long. Taking a light before it has a chance to glow brings extra brilliance to his hue. Helps him form into this world better.
Venerator's eyes now filled with such joy, and for the first time, I could see something beneath it. A swirling mass of tendrils running across scarred and leathery skin with exposed pink flesh, the nose stripped to the bone and his eyes hanging in jagged sockets.
He is a devourer, one who chooses each of his disciples carefully until he is out of his cocoon and ready to fly anew. But my job was special. Master took my light and dimmed it just enough that I'd send out the signals for your bar to appear. Master says this is how people locate you when they need you the most.
I began sweating. My vision blurred, and my chest felt hot as I gasped for air that wasn't coming. The feeling of malice seemingly pulsating through his arms and transferring to me. It was borderline palpable. His teeth were visibly shaking as he smiled. This was the face of an animal, not a person.
I don't understand myself, but I am just a pilgrim, so I need only follow. You tried altering the course of fate, and that, dear friend, was your biggest error. Master doesn't wish to have any adjudicators. He has made his choice, and so should you.
I felt the stabbing sensation of a tendril in my side, a hot, burning liquid beginning to break down my cells and push its way through my bloodstream. My hands felt numb, and I stopped fighting, barely able to muster a whisper.
You wanted my story? Well, here it is, Sullivan. What message would you like me to tell the Master? He will reward me handsomely for this. Perhaps even a seat at his table.
He called out with glee, pulling my body towards his face so he could hear my last gasp of air. Maybe it was by chance or by divine intervention, but Emperor Refuge kicked in. I felt the surge of energy fill my body and remove the semblance of pain for the briefest of moments. I knew I had to act quickly before I succumbed to the darkness. Gripping his arm as hard as I could, I shouted at the top of my lungs, "Cheddar! Clean up!" The sound of the back door swinging open, off of its hinges, broke through the air as Cheddar rose behind Venerator. The chunky mountain dog, a distant memory as he now stood on his hind legs. His upper half hung coiling like a snake, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. He was breathing heavily, his slobber a thick black and steaming hot, his jaw opening far larger than any dog should be able to muster. The grip on my neck loosened as abject fear now replaced the malicious intent. Venerator turned his attention to Cheddar and looked visibly terrified. The last thing I saw before the subsequent darkness, after being dropped to the ground, was the unhinged form of Cheddar doing what he does best, cleaning up. First went the head, then the limbs. The last thing was a tendril being graciously mopped up by Cheddar as I fell into unconsciousness. Emperor's Refuge taking me gracefully into its arms. My memories flooded me while I was surfing in the darkness. Memories of a man I used to be, of someone who could barely hold a sentence together without the voices overtaking me and driving me to total madness. Of a man who made one crucial mistake and found himself in a coffee shop along the countryside, greeted by an older woman who gave him a drink and listened for a while. How long has it been, I wonder?
Hey, what happened to you?
Stabbed. Poison. I gasped the formless voice. Pain riddled my body as I felt my consciousness being thrown towards the light at an alarming pace. The whiplash coming with a fresh level of pain that steadily rose the more aware I was becoming. My stomach felt like it was rotting away and I could no longer feel my legs. Cheddar whined, and the unfamiliar voice of a woman with dark skin and curly black hair became apparent as she kneeled over me, her eyes darting across my damaged body.
You're coming too. Thank goodness. Tell me what to do. Can't exactly call for emergency services here.
She was calm, her bedside manner giving me even more cause for concern about my well-being. I tried to move, but the pain was so intense that I felt consciousness ripping away from me if I dared to venture too far. I cast my eyes to her and to the bar above me. Top shelf. Metal. Bar at the back. Silver bottle with a chain around it. Ice cold to the touch. I foolishly tried to move my arm on instinct, and again the pain tugged at my mind, reminding me of my error. The woman sprang to her feet and rummaged on the top shelf, the urgency causing her to knock a couple bottles aside, much to my dismay. Sure enough, she got her hands on the silver bottle and brought it down to me. It's something I had not seen in many, many years. It's more of a teardrop than a standard bottle. The chains around it silver even to this day. A small combination lock at the top of the cap. I whispered the number to her. She pulled the cork off, a chill rushing through the room. She read the note on the side, a teardrop falling from the moon with a trail effect burning off of it as the logo reads, Professor Ambrose Ashton Smith's Silver Tear Potion. Your cycle shall not end so long as you keep this close. 1 glass for injury, 2 for death. Springing to action, she poured out 1 glass, and the bottle fell empty at the very last drop. She didn't register this, however, and propped the glass under my lips as I gratefully drank, the horrific cold chill flowing through my body and beating back whatever the hell Venerator had infected me with. After a few minutes, the sensation in my body returned, and I got to my feet, still a little woozy, but thankfully none the worse. Well, Looks like you'll get a drink on me. I chuckled, wincing. My side still a little sore and the tear ruining my blazer. Thanks, by the way. To whom do I owe my gratitude? She stretched out a hand and I took it, a firm grip meeting me as she flashed a grin.
Nightmare Detective Georgia Halpin. Someone put a call in that there was an incident here, and, well, here I am.
The woman took a seat at the bar and rested her head in her hands, smiling in bewilderment as Cheddar sat at the foot of the bar, panting and focused on me.
You're really okay? What the hell was in that drink?
Just a favor from a long time ago. Won't be able to use that again. Was really hoping it'd come handy in an epic battle of some kind. But hell, I never go anywhere. So I guess it is what it is. I put the bottle away in a small box underneath the bar and began to properly take in Halpin. She was in her late 20s, athletic and sporting a smart casual attire that suggested she took her job very seriously, but enjoyed being sociable. A definitive uptake from Mr. Sewer Nightmare earlier on. Her hair was tied back in a bun with a long golden pen in the center.
So, how does this place work? How much do I need to fork out for you to bend an ear?
She asked coyly, a flash of pearly whites as I reciprocated. You just need to tell a story, but since I owe you... I trailed off, realizing what I was actually saying, but she caught on quickly.
Since you owe me, you've got to tell the story. Bet you didn't think that would happen when you woke up this morning, huh?
She laughed, her eyes scanning the shelves behind me for something that took her fancy.
Well, you show me something, and I'll show you something. Sound fair?
Her eyes resting over a black and white bottle in the shape of a bed stood on its end, with a person fast asleep on top, a cork in the center of their chest. I obliged and grabbed it from the shelf and set it down in front of her, the label reading, "The Thought Collective presents Emporium brand black whiskey with a dash of pensive. Relive those golden moments in the black of night." Not a bad choice. This'll either bring clarity to your mind or make everything feel like it's in murky waters. Can be a hell of a journey if you're not careful, you know, I said, uncorking the bottle and letting the smell of ginseng and walnuts waft through the air before fetching a large mead tankard and pouring the contents sideways. The black liquid left the container, coming out clear as crystal when hitting the tankard, black particles bubbling beneath the surface until the end of the pour when a dark froth bubbled at the top. I slid it over to her and gave her a nod as she took a sip, her eyes closing in enjoyment as she let it fill her. She spun her hand around, signaling me to talk. All right. Fine. Here goes. I sighed and fetched Cheddar a slab of meat while talking, learning from before and opting to keep the detective in my sight the entire time. I sort of fell into this business. I wasn't always the suave, handsome, charming, and obviously humble bartender you see before you. I was once just a fucked up kid trying to find his way. She finished her sip with a gulp and smiled, wiping her mouth and looking intently at me, nodding. You know, everyone goes through that phase in their lives where they absolutely have no clue what they're doing. Mine just lasted from 10 to 30 and saw no sign of slowing down as I fell into my late youth. I just felt lost, like I belonged nowhere. So, I made people pay attention to me whichever way I could. If that meant lashing out, well, so be it. Bad publicity was just fine by me. I shook my head. Being on the giving end of these was not my idea of fun, but a promise was a promise. But eventually all our demons catch up to us, and I got in deep with the mistake I made, and I was given a choice. Do this job or rot. I chose this job, and here I am. The end. I held my arms up and let them fall to my side before shrugging.
Your demons catching up to you, eh? Yeah, I'm sure Gomez de Stefano's did as well.
Halpin nonchalantly declared before taking another gulp of the drink and wiping her mouth, locking eyes with me.
How much of what you just said was bullshit, Sully?
I smirked. She was quick on her feet. Enough that you can't seem to figure it out. How'd you know my name? Why are you really here? She finished her drink, slamming it down on the table before taking a walk in the bar foyer, looking at the photos of past events we'd put on and the notes grateful patrons had left behind. Hey, Sully, thanks for having me for that long weekend. I have no idea how things got the way they are, but the drink you gave me was the best. Eternally grateful, Don Bellum. Sullivan, our time together was irreplaceable. The drink's exquisite and your wit sharp enough to cleave me in two. I will hold this time in my heart, for you pulled me out of the darkest pit and with one drink made it so I had wings. I hope to see you once more someday, my comrade. Maximilian Wentworth. Sully, you know what this means to me. Everything else has already been said. Thank you. Give Cheddar the biggest hug for me, okay? KL.
Well now, this one looks new. So many grateful patrons, you've amassed quite the following here, haven't you, Sully? I assume that's why Gomez found his way here a couple nights ago. How your last customer found their way here too.
She turned to look at me, eyes narrowed.
But we've not seen them since. Nobody has. Even asked some of your regulars and Miss Letty here, but nobody had an answer for me. How oddly protective.
Who sent you? Are you really concerned for someone like Gomez? I asked, feeling suddenly very on edge. She laughed bitterly at the notion.
Don't be silly. That vile shit was a foot soldier and a greedy one at that. No, I'm here because you clearly have no understanding of your boundaries, and if violence won't make the line in the sand clear, maybe fear will. Ours is not a group you want to trifle with. You hit us, we hit back harder. So a message must be sent.
She opened her palms out and clenched her fists.
A pity, really. I liked this drink. But temperance finds its work is never done.
Without a second to respond, she began punching her stomach over and over until the drink she consumed moments ago poured out of her like a black cloud through gags and belches. It formed a haze that quickly turned into a cloud. In it, I could see figures moving around as the image became clearer and an apartment room could be made out. It was a dark apartment room with a row of plants in the corner, sitting dutifully and waiting for water. A bunch of baby toys littered the floor, a stuffed animal ripped to pieces and cast aside. I didn't want to see this. A hunched-over figure voraciously chewed on something as blood and viscera coated the floors. Its shoulder blades jutted out and the hood barely covered the large, bulbous head as it gnashed away. Two hooded members standing on either side and watching with vested interest. The bar darkened, and even the sounds of Cheddar barking were muted as the thing in the haze clicked its back, straightened up, and turned. Huge, black eyes falling upon me as mandibles clicked and blood-covered pedipalps shivered.
The message has been delivered, my lord. Temperance has served you. The light beckons. The next stage of your transcendence is upon us.
Halpin called, laughing maniacally unseen amid the smoke and haze. I knew whatever the fuck I was staring at was beyond any weird story, gruesome tale, or bizarre encounter I'd had to that point. It was something that, for the briefest of moments, created a fear in me that screamed to close the bar and move. But once you start something like this, you cannot stop it. I knew that. There was something preying on my patrons, and I couldn't ignore that. Still, in that moment, amid those blackened clouds, I felt a slither of fear so many victims had fallen prey to before me. What I was so worried would continue to befall them if I stood idly by when they came to me for help. The black eyes shimmered, and the voice resonated through me, ringing out long after the warning was delivered and I had been left in the dark bar. Cheddar sat with me on the floor as I stared at the empty bottle of Emperor's Refuge and lamented on the clarity it could give me, the words swelling and bursting in my skull. The cycle begins anew. I'll see you soon.
Welcome back, listeners. Quite the tale of intrigue, isn't it? I sure wouldn't want to be in poor Sully's shoes right about now. But that being said, while you all were listening to the antics in the spaces, I was just flipping through our old collection of penny dreadfuls that I mentioned before for old time's sake. And I just so happened to find one that talks about me. And, well, it's just curious, you see, because this was long before my radio days, and yet, on page 12, yeah, here it is. Exactly the words that I'm saying right now as I'm saying them. I mean, really, word for word, exactly this. How could they have predicted this exact script when it's not even a script? I'm just talking. These are just my thoughts, and it's somehow all right here. And, listeners, I've just skipped a few pages ahead. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. The last page is just one big illustration of... Is that the radio tower surrounded by wasps? Okay, maybe we need to wrap this up. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other transmissions. We're adding them regularly, and we'd love to have you as part of the Dusklight family by subscribing, hitting the bell of snakes, and, you guessed it, more snakes, and leaving a comment with stories you love for Everett's many-legged runners to find. I do want to thank all of our patrons for making this possible. If you want to sign up, it's as little as $1 and you get exclusive content, early access videos and stories, updates, and more. But times are tough, and we will always be grateful for support no matter what form it comes in. Financial, spiritual, corporeal, maniacal, whatever you want. Today, Dusklight gives thanks to our Sturgeonite faithfuls, Haley Clark, PRDDL12, Sabrina Alexander, Jason Webb, and Laurie W. Purple Crayon Eaters Mary Peck, Square, Gianni D. Lorena, Feeny Von Karma, Max, Ashabel, Death 31, and Heather Cayley, who, after marching for Sturgeon, have begun sacrificing all librarians in the name of their god, Malum, who, of course, demands knowledge. Our janitors, Alex Nunez, Amy Shawn, Arkham Cookie, and Fresh Hire Scott, replacing the recently promoted Ethan, and all currently entering the maintenance tunnels to clear out the newest scourge of Dusklight, the elevated horror aficionado. Our nightmare detectives, Adrian Rodriguez, cop buddy Ethan Nelson, and new recruits, Fox Clifford, a recent transfer from Menasha County with a thick Necronomicon guide and a loose Eldritch cannon, and his partner, Professor Creepypasta, on loan from St. Martin's Institute for Higher Learning, who are now entering the buddy cop era of their investigations. Their next case? The tragedy that befell Denny's after 3 a.m. Oof. God rest their souls. Our Voidwalker, Evan Diaz, currently investigating the phenomenon of the black hole sun. And of course, our ever-expanding Blackwell family. Jackal Blackwell, who should really invest in his modeling career. Seriously, Jackal, I could tear up that NDA in an instant, just say the word. Clue Blackwell, who in the past few seconds between one blink and the next, has somehow donned beekeeping gear without moving in any way, which is really not reassuring me on this whole wasp thing. Tabitha Blackwell, who recently has taken up residence in the entryway of one of her many cave systems, waving her hands frantically and yelling at anyone who passes by, "Don't come in! Seriously, don't! I'm warning you! It's getting weird in here." She yells this whether they seem to want to enter the cave or not. And Papa Kyle Blackwell, who appears to be sorting the smaller bones in his collection into what looks to be those coin sorter rolls. I'm saving up for something big, he declares, through gnashing teeth and steam-filled gasps. Something bigger than anyone has ever seen before. So, I would advise maybe steering clear of the local banks for the next few days, listeners. We love you and fear you, Papa. We thank you humbly for your patronage and look to see you bright and early for Dusklight orientation. Purple crayons and existential dread will be provided. And one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. I'm starting to hear some very ominous buzzing, listeners, so quickly now, drink some lemonade Capri Sun, have some dino nuggies, watch a video about the history of Dream Pop, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow with the window open and the stars twinkling down on you. Start and end each day with kindness in your heart. You matter. You are loved. And every day is another chance. I have been Evelynn L. Blackwell, and I'll see you all again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.